Welcome to another quiet journey into the forgotten corners of the past. Tonight, we invite you to settle in, rest your eyes, and let your mind drift gently back to the age of soot and steam, of polished boots and ticking pocket watches, to the time of this was not the high-speed commute of today, nor the romanticized Orient Express of glossy posters. It was something altogether more grounded, a strange in-between of wonder and discomfort. For many, it was their very first time moving. So tonight, you ride along the iron rails of 19th century England, not as a tourist, but as a passenger. We'll begin with a long immersive look at what it was really like to travel by train during this period, not just the movement, but the etiquette, the clothes, the discomforts, the small anxieties of shared public space. Then, we'll meet one of the visionaries who made it all possible. After that, we'll take a detour into the strange and forgotten lost stations, haunted tracks, and ghostly train legends. And finally, we'll slip into the quiet splendor of the elite, how the wealthy experienced the rails, and what it meant to let your thoughts drift like steam rising from an engine, and allow the rhythm of the rails to lull you deeper into rest. Imagine yourself on a gray London morning. The year is 1872. You are standing on the damp platform of Paddington Station, where steam coils in thick clouds around iron arches. The air is heavy with coal smoke, hot oil, and the faint tang of rust. Porters shout in clipped voices, wheeled trunks rattle across stone, and whistles. You clutch your ticket tightly paper-printed with fine ink, slightly curled at the edges, and prepare to board the train. Let's say you are not wealthy, perhaps a clerk or a governess, traveling third class. This means no cushioned seat, no real window, only a wooden bench in an open-sided carriage exposed. If it rains, you get wet. If the smoke drifts wrong, you breathe coal. There is no heating, no lighting. The floor vibrates violently with every turn of the wheels, and the smell a potent mix of wet wool, soot, stale air, and the faint sharpness of tobacco. The train begins to move with a jolt. Your body lurches, and the wooden bench beneath you rattles your bones. You try not to make eye contact with the stranger sitting opposite you. Speaking without introduction is frowned upon. Everyone sits stiffly, upright, silent. The train offers no privacy, and yet demands perfect politeness. You try to read the paper, but the motion and dim light make it impossible. You shift your feet, already aching. This will be a 5-hour ride, and there are no toilets on board. That luxury belongs only to the first-class compartments, which you are not allowed to enter. The train stops suddenly near a junction. Outside, a small boy waves. Inside, no one reacts. You continue to stare forward. The rules of public behavior are strict even here. And then the man next to you sneezes. A wet, loud, uncontained sneeze. You hear nothing. You must pretend it didn't happen. Etiquette requires it. There is no bless you. Eventually, the train arrives at its destination, but not before 2 more stops, 3 unexpected delays, and a brief moment where you feared your bonnet would fly off through the open side of the carriage. By the time you step onto the platform, your dress is creased, your boots are scuffed, your eyes sting, and your entire body vibrates with the lingering rhythm of the rails. And yet, it was faster than a horse. To understand how the Victorian train became such a defining feature of the age, you must first meet the man who made it all possible, George Stephenson, a name not shouted in the streets today, yet once whispered with awe beside every stretch of newly laid track. A self-taught, coal-stained dreamer who laid the foundations of the modern railway. Let us go back further now, to 1781. George is born in Wylam, a coal mining village in northeastern England. His father works at a colliery maintaining steam engines used to pump water out of the mines. They are poor, too poor to afford school for young George. He works from the age of 8, tending to engines and watching, always watching. In the flickering lamplight of the coal pits, George learns by doing, disassembling engines, studying their rattling pistons and wheezing valves, until he knows them better than his own reflection. By his 20s, he can fix anything mechanical, but what he really dreams of is movement. Smooth, fast, independent movement, something that doesn't rely on horses or connect. He watches the primitive rail systems used to haul coal and begins to tinker, imagine, improve. In 1814, he builds his first locomotive, Belshare, a small, stout engine designed to pull coal wagons. It is not elegant, it is not fast, but it works. George is methodical, cautious. Where others leap, he perfects. He refines rail tracks, understanding that the metal and wood beneath the wheels matter just as much as the engines themselves. He builds railways that don't break, that last longer, that curve gently and climb. He constructs the Stockton and Darlington Railway, the world's first public railway to use steam locomotives, and later, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, which shocks the nation with its speed and success. People scream when they see the trains coming. Some faint, others refuse to ride, certain that traveling over 30 miles per hour will stop the heart or warp the mind. George Stephenson becomes known as the father of railways, but he never seeks fame. He avoids politics. He prefers walking the tracks in silence, inspecting bolts and timbers, adjusting designs. His accent is thick, his manners simple, yet kings consult him. His name is spoken in Parliament. Across Europe, people begin to lay tracks in imitation of his system. The Stephenson gauge, still used today. As the years pass, others refine the engines, expand the networks, create elegance, first-class dining, and timetables. But it is Stephenson who laid the iron bones of the... He dies in 1848 quietly, after watching the world change completely within his lifetime. Villages are no longer isolated. News travels in hours, not weeks. Goods flow like rivers, and millions, even if they do not know his name, owe him their movement, their connection, their modernity. As trains carved iron paths across Britain, they didn't merely move people and goods. They carried with them whispers, mysteries, legends, a strange new culture, born in smoke and steam. Imagine yourself seated in a quiet Victorian station at dusk. Gas lamps flicker, casting trembling golden halos on damp brick.
Somewhere nearby, a locomotive sighs and hisses like a beast at rest. And among the swirling vapors, stories drift. One of the earliest rail legends is that of the phantom train, a ghostly locomotive said to appear on abandoned tracks, silently barreling through the mist with no driver, no passengers. Only lightless windows and a shriek of iron on iron.
These tales often arose around stations where tragedy had occurred, a derailment, a suicide, or an accident on the line. Workers would claim to hear the whistle late at night, long after the last departure. Some saw flickering lamps floating midair. Others spoke of tracks that trembled with no train. The stories served a purpose. They were cautionary. They warned of carelessness, of haste, of disrespect toward the rail. A system still so new, so powerful, and so poorly understood. Alongside the ghost stories came a more curious development. An entire culture of train travel had to be invented. For the first time, strangers were trapped together in small compartments for hours. Men and women, rich and poor, travelers and clerks, all facing one another in silence. Victorians, unaccustomed to such proximity, developed elaborate codes of conduct. Never speak unless spoken to. Do not stare through the window too long. It was seen as melancholy or rude. Avoid reading newspapers too broadly. One must not disturb one's seatmate with rustling. Always tip the porter, but never too generously lest it reflect poorly on your breeding. Even the luggage carried meaning. Leather-trimmed trunks signaled status. Canvas bags, perhaps hardship. The sound of one's baggage arriving often preceded judgment of the passenger themselves. The newness of trains made them perfect settings for mystery, and soon, reality followed fiction. In 1864, Britain saw its first recorded railway murder, the case of Thomas Briggs, a banker found fatally injured in a first-class carriage. The public was horrified. Train travel, once glamorous, now seemed vulnerable. The killer, Franz Emler, fled to America, sparking an international manhunt that gripped newspapers on both sides of the Atlantic. The story helped cement rail travel as not just modern, but dangerous in new and unimagined ways. Writers were inspired. Wilkie Collins, Charles Dickens, and eventually Agatha Christie all crafted rail-bound. Even Sherlock Holmes would sometimes solve mysteries aboard trains where time, space, and clues were neatly confined. Then, there were the stations themselves. Places like St. Pancras, Paddington, and York, constructed like cathedrals to movement. Their vaulted ceilings and marble ticket counters inspired awe and perhaps a little. For some Victorians, these terminals became their first brush with architecture. So grand, the scent of fresh coal smoke, the metallic tang of iron, the rhythmic shouting of destinations all combined to create an overwhelming sensory experience. People didn't simply take trains, they entered a new world when they stepped onto a platform. So as we drift along, let these soft, forgotten stories settle in like cinders on your pillow. Part cautionary tale, part marvel, part memory of a world still half steeped in wonder. And next, let us turn from the common traveler to the extraordinary, the aristocrat, the industrialist. As the ordinary masses clutched paper tickets and climbed into stiff-backed compartments far removed behind velvet ropes and polished brass, were the truly privileged. The aristocrats, magnates, and monarchs who traveled not by train but with trains of their own. This was another world entirely. Let your mind drift to the royal train of Queen Victoria. Commissioned in the 1840s and upgraded throughout her reign, it was less a mode of transport and more a rolling palace. Its walls were lined with silk damask. The Queen's sleeping cabin held a full mahogany trim, brass fixtures, even a footman's bell beside the carved desk. Every detail spoke of monarchy in motion. She had initially feared rail travel, you see. Too fast, too undignified. But once convinced, she embraced it with regal flourish. The staff aboard were silent professionals. Her tea arrived piping hot. Her view always included specially prepared floral arrangements. Along the track, stations were cleared in advance. Crowds were hushed by police presence, and onlookers whispered that the rails themselves seemed smoother when the Queen's train. Victoria even had a bathroom with plumbing on board decades before many homes did, and wherever the train stopped, a red carpet would be unfurled from door to platform. Not far behind the monarchy came the industrial elite railway barons, mine owners, bankers, and shipping lords. Men of vast wealth who commissioned private coaches, each custom-built and often more elaborate than the royal compartments themselves. These cars were clad in inlaid wood, etched glass, leather upholstery. Some held smoking rooms, others, miniature libraries, and a few even had secret compartments for safes, for ledgers, or for the occasional bottle of brandy one preferred not. Here, business continued in motion. Wealth whispered across velvet seats. Power mapped new coal routes over fine china and candlelight. Sometimes entire families would live aboard for weeks, moving from estate to estate without once touching the public platforms. These journeys were as much a display as a convenience. To arrive in your own gilded carriage was to declare, silently but definitively, that you belonged to a world of railroad royalty. But for every golden handle grasped by a noble hand, there were invisible hands behind the scenes. Servants, maids, and porters lived in cramped quarters at the rear of elite cars, waking before dawn to stoke coals, polish brass, or prepare elaborate meals and shaking, swaying. Many slept little. Some never left the train during weeks of travel, and yet they were expected to remain invisible. Shadows on a velvet wall, never too loud, never too tired. Imagine that as you drift deeper, the soft sound of careful footsteps, the hush of cloth being smoothed, the clink of china, all orchestrated in silence. In time, the elite trains became more than just transport. They were stages for diplomacy, scandal, romance. Whispers spread of secret meetings between politicians aboard private cars, affairs conducted between stations, entire business deals negotiated between London and Edinburgh. And then there were the wedding trains, the mourning trains, the celebration trains, each painted, dressed, and adorned for their single purpose. Then gone like smoke on the wind, as the aristocrats reclined and commoners rocked gently in their benches, one thing united them all. The rhythm, steel on steel, the muted thunder beneath one's feet, the lullaby of motion that carried them, unknowingly, into the modern world. Now, we ease toward our journey's end. And so, dear listener, we leave the golden lit corridors and soot darkened engines behind a world of velvet and coal, of iron ambition and quiet discomfort. The Victorian train was more than just, it was a living artery pulsing across the empire. It carried not only letters, coal and cargo, but dreams, fears, expectations, and the slow churn of progress. In its gentle sway, one could feel the beating heart of an age. The ink-stained clerk with callous fingers, the reformer sketching timetables by candlelight, the forgotten servant ironing linen at dawn, the noblewoman sipping jasmine tea while watching the countryside roll past like a painted. Each passenger, high or humble, was part of something larger, a journey forward, even when they didn't know the destination. And perhaps as you lie in your bed tonight, you can still hear it faint and distant. The soft click-clack of wheels on iron, the low whistle in the fog, the steady breathing of a world forever in motion. Let that sound carry you gently now down dim corridors and quiet tunnels toward sleep. Because no matter the century, we are all passengers on the long rail of time. Good night, and thank you for traveling with us on Boring History. For sleep. So, as you rest and listen to the gentle hum of imagined tracks beneath you, remember not the romantic, but the builder, the man with coal under his nails and maps in his mind.